Good day, everybody, and welcome to this fascinating episode because I have a present in store for you. What's the present, you may ask? The present is of the skills that are required in the present to be ready for the jobs of the future. In the previous episode, we looked at the World Economic Forum's report on the future of jobs, and our focus was exclusively on the jobs of the future, how they are going to pan out, what kind of jobs will be important in the future, what kind of jobs will be most in focus and the least in focus. While that makes for very interesting reading, is it actionable enough? Can you truly prepare yourself for a job without doing something fundamental? And that something fundamental is the focus of today's episode, which is all about skills. Jobs may come and jobs may go. Their job titles may change, the manifestations may change. It is just the covering or the repackaging of the skills that you are bringing to the table. At the end of the day, what goes on forever, irrespective of the kind of jobs that are available in the market, is really your skills. So, in order to claim your present, be present here with me for the next few minutes, and I will present to you a pathway to a bright future. Ultimately, the decision to walk on a particular pathway is entirely yours, and skills are all about doing. But before doing, let us know what we need to do. And with that, let me get straight away into the first of the observations of the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report around skills. Before we even get to the future, the first question that we need to ask is about the present, which is what are the core skills that are required for today? What are the core skills that employers and large organizations feel are core or inherent to their workforce? If we look at this chart, the first thing that strikes you is probably that there is too much data and there is too much of cognitive overload in terms of trying to understand what this is. Well, the number one skill is analytical thinking, but you'll need a hell lot of analytical skills to decode this chart because these are just data points all over the place. We will come back to this, but first let's use some amount of analytical skills to decode them and put a structure around these skills. In order to do that, let's look at the global skills taxonomy used by the World Economic Forum, not just for this report, but even otherwise as well. If you want to dive deeper into this and go to the next level of detail or granularity, then you can do so on the website of World Economic Forum. And I'll drop the link to the Global Skills Taxonomy page in the description below so that you can dive deeper at your own leisure. In essence, the structure is based upon two broad categories. The first one being attitudes and the second one being abilities or aptitudes or knowledge. Firstly, in terms of attitude, you can think of it in this way. The first category of attitude is about the self. So that's what self-efficacy is all about. The second one is about your interrelationship with others. So that's working with others. And the third one is yourself in relation to society and relation to the external environment. And that is about ethics. And it also talks about the environment in a big way. The second broad category of the skills taxonomy is really about our knowledge and abilities. And once again, if we were to think about it in a structured way, the first set of knowledge and abilities would be around our physical abilities. So that would entail our physicality, our five senses, and the physical attributes that we bring to the workplace. However, in the knowledge economy, in the information age, it's not so much about the physical labor that we bring to the workforce, but about the mental labor. So the second skill category is about cognitive skills, which as we will see in this report is extremely crucial in the context of the current as well as the future skills that are required. The first two categories of knowledge and abilities are essentially internal, talking about the physical as well as the cognitive capabilities. But in order to be effective, what we really need to do is manage the resources that are available at our disposal. So the third skill is about management skills, and the fourth one is about engagement skills, in particular with a focus on engaging with the customers. But in today's context, I would say engaging with all sorts of stakeholders, not just the customer. And finally, the fifth and the last of the categories is about technology. And of course, if you've read the Future of Jobs report or seen my earlier video, you know that technology has been the mainstay of all the future and forward-looking jobs. So watch out for technology skills in particular as we go back to the previous chart and look at what the world and the largest of employers are talking about in terms of what they believe are the core skills of their workforce today. So, if we look back at this chart and this time with the lens of these 8 categories of skill sets, we will find that two of these categories that I spoke about stand out. The first one is quite obvious. The top two skills, analytical thinking and creative thinking, as well as one of them down there, which is systems thinking, all belong to the category of cognitive skills. And these cognitive skills are by far the most important ones that employers believe are core to their workforce. The second set of skills that are core to the workforce today are self efficacy skills. What do these entail? If you look at many of the skills in the top 10, be it resilience, flexibility, and agility, motivation and self awareness, curiosity and lifelong learning, dependability and attention to detail, all these are skills that are broadly categorized as self efficacy skills. So clearly, the most valued skills are the cognitive skills and the self efficacy skills. But where does that leave technology skills? If we look back at the list of the top 10 jobs of the future, we notice that technology has a big role to play. In fact, almost all of the top 10 jobs of the future are somehow related to the data stack. And in my terminology, data being an acronym for data, analytics, technology, and AI. So, why is it that these technology skills are not placed right at the top in this chart? There are 5 of these technology skills, and they are placed at number 6, 15, 17, 20, and 22, respectively, for technology literacy, AI and big data, design and user experience, programming, and networking and cybersecurity. Well, the first and most obvious reason is because this ranking is based on the current skills, on the employer's assessment of what they believe are the core skills of their existing workforce. This is not based on the future of skills, which is in consonance with the future of jobs. Rather, this is only an estimation of their current reality. Since our focus in this episode is really on preparing ourselves with the right sort of skills for the future of jobs, let's look at how the employers believe the skills are going to evolve in future. This chart here, again, may be difficult to digest from a cognitive standpoint, so let me break it down for you. Firstly, what it really represents is the net increase in the importance of the skills going forward. So the blue bars on the right hand side indicate the percentage of respondents who believe that this skill is going to be important, more important in the future as compared to the present. Whereas the purple bars on the left hand side indicate the percentage of respondents that mentioned that this skill is going to be less important going forward. And the skills are ranked by the net positive impact. Once again, as you can see from this chart, there is just too much of clutter. So let me break it down for you. What I believe will be the most useful way to look at this chart is to compare the position of each of the skills in this chart versus what the employers believe is a core skill for the present. So that gives us a present versus future differential. And if we look at this differential, once again, since we were talking about technology, it comes as no surprise that the two of the biggest differentials or the jumps in this chart are related to skills which fall in the category of technology skills. And these ones are AI and big data, which has jumped from being the 15th most important core skill of the present to being the 7th most evolved skill of the future. Similarly, tech literacy, which was already at number 6 in the previous chart in terms of its current importance, has moved up even further to the third position in the evolution of skills or skills on the rise. While cognitive skills were already pretty much at the top, leaving very little scope for an increase in the ranking on this chart, what we will find is that creative and analytical thinking are occupying the top two spots on both the previous chart as well as this chart, underscoring their importance. But the biggest mover here is systems thinking, which has moved up from being 11th in the list of core skills importance to number 6 here on skills on the rise. So clearly, cognitive skills are what you really need to be gunning for. And last but not the least, as we also saw in the Future of Jobs report, there is a lot of focus on environment, on ESG, on governance, and the skills related to environment stewardship have moved up from number 23 in the previous chart to number 19 on this chart, indicating that these skills are going to be more and more important going forward. Now that we have a good understanding of what are the skills that are core to the present skills and the present workforce, as also the skills that are on the rise and are going to be more and more important in the future times, the key question that you need to ask yourself is, are you preparing yourself for the future? Well, I can't help you with that since the report doesn't talk about you, but it certainly talks about what companies are doing in terms of their reskilling focus, in terms of where their effort, initiatives, and dollars are being spent on retraining and reskilling their current workforce. And that gives us a pretty good insight into what the L&D or the learning and development cells of companies are focusing on. So this chart simply shows the same 26 skills, but this time they are arranged in the order of importance that the companies attribute to each of these skills in terms of their focus for reskilling their workforce going forward. So once again, we find that analytical thinking and creative thinking skills are the most important priorities for employers when they are talking about reskilling their workforce. And why not? They continue to be core to the workforce, and in addition to that, they are also the most important skills on the rise. So naturally, the reskilling focus is around these two skills. But apart from that, let's look at which are those skills where the focus on reskilling going forward is the highest as compared to the relative position of the skill in terms of the current constitution of the workforce. Luckily for us, this time the report has made our job easy by giving the ranking difference, which indicates that. So as you can see right on top, AI and big data is the biggest jump on this list as it has moved from 15th position in the list of the most important core skills to being number 3 on the list in terms of the reskilling focus. So clearly, there is a mad scramble out there for employers wanting to reskill their workforce on AI and big data sort of skills. Apart from that, some other technology skills also make the cut, as you would expect, given that this is what they believe is the future of jobs. So you have design and user experience sort of skills moving up from 17th to the 8th position, a big jump of 9 places. As also, network and cybersecurity moves up 5 places from 22nd position to the 17th position. These are undoubtedly extremely important skills, and employers are certainly aware of this. Apart from this, three other skills that stand out in terms of their future focus on reskilling are leadership and influence, environment stewardship, for reasons that I described earlier, which has moved up a massive 10 spots from 23rd position to the 13th position. And last but not the least, marketing and media, which has moved up 6 notches from 21 to 15. This is just one side of the coin where companies are focusing on reskilling their workforce for these sort of skills. But the important thing also to look at is which are those skill sets where the companies are not focused on reskilling their workforce. And the reason why this is an even more important question for you is because if your employer is not going to be focused on reskilling you for these skills, then the implication is that you need to do it yourself to equip yourself with these skills, because many of these skills you will find are important skills not just for the present but also for the future. And the biggest category of skills to focus on from this perspective is the category of self-efficacy skills. All four of the self-efficacy skills, which were all anyways in the top half of the list of the most important core skills, have slipped in this chart. Motivation and self-awareness has dropped down significantly from 4th to 9th. Dependability and attention to detail has dropped massively from 7th to 18th. Resilience and curiosity have also dropped by a notch or a couple of notches. So this clearly indicates that the employers are not focused on reskilling their workforce in terms of self-efficacy. This is something that intuitively they are expecting the workforce to build on their own. And it's not that these skills are not valued or less valued. They are extremely valued, they are core, not just for the current but also for the future. But you are left to fend for yourself as far as developing, acquiring, and honing these skills are concerned. So that's really where you need to focus in terms of your own self learning sort of initiatives. The other big skill that stands out for me in this list is from the surprising area of cognitive skills. So even though analytical thinking and creative thinking are right at the top across all of the three lists, systems thinking has dropped down significantly from 11th to 19th. And this is despite the fact that in the evolution of skills or skills on the rise, it was ranked number 6. So even though it's considered to be the 11th most important core skill and the 6th most important skill in terms of its evolution, it has dropped down significantly to number 19 on this list in terms of the reskilling focus of corporates. And once again, what this means is that you've got to fend for yourself. As far as systems thinking is concerned, there are two more skill sets which have dropped significantly in this list, and they are quality control and reading, writing, and maths. And the reason that I would imagine this is the case is because employers probably think that these are basic skills, foundational skills, which everybody needs to bring to the table to the workforce. And hence, they are not focused so much on reskilling the employees for these two skills. So, the important question to ask yourself is, do you believe on all of these skills that are not the reskilling focus of your employers? Are you doing good enough? Are you better than average? Or are you at an average or are you below average? If you need to catch up, then this is not something that the employer is going to help you to do in most of the cases. At least that's not going to be their focus. So it needs to be part of your initiatives, your own learning calendar, and certainly on your own self development agenda. At this stage, wouldn't it be wonderful if we would know what the individuals have really been learning on their own? There has been a massive upsurge in the e-learning or the self-learning industry. And one of the biggest names that has aided this revolution is Coursera. Luckily for us, the data from Coursera about individuals' focus on their self-learning is also part of this report. And the great news is that since it has been provided by Coursera itself, we know that the data is certainly authentic. So the x-axis in this chart reflects exactly what we were discussing just now, which is the company's focus in terms of reskilling for each of these categories. So if you look at the extreme right hand side of the x-axis, the top three skills will be familiar to you because they are about creative thinking, analytical thinking, and AI and big data. The top three skills that we saw in the vertical format in the previous chart. However, the y-axis here represents something totally different and a new data point which we've not seen so far, which is about the share of the learning hours that individuals are spending on Coursera. Of course, this data does not reflect all the online learning that is taking place in the world and is only restricted to what is being done on Coursera, but it is fairly representative, I would imagine, for at least the kind of skills that we are talking about. So if we look only at the y-axis, it comes as no surprise that the number one skill that people are studying for on their own on platforms like Coursera are really about programming. And most of the hard skills or the technical skills are right on top because that's what these platforms are better suited for. But these are things that we intuitively already know. The core objective of this episode is really to uncover and unearth the skills that are going to be important for us in the future, and secondly, also to figure out what will be the pathway to developing or acquiring those skills. So, how can this chart be useful for us? If we look at the bottom stack of this chart, these are things that people are typically not studying on Coursera, or if we can generalize, not studying on their own in terms of their self development or self learning initiatives. And if we combine this bottom stack with the elements that are on the left hand side, which means a lower x axis position, indicating that the employers are also not focusing on reskilling you for these skills, then this gives us the gaps. But some of these skills may be important and some of these are less important. So the biggest gap for the important skills which are not being focused on by the employer as well as the employee's self-learning initiatives are two. The first one is systems thinking, which we've heard of before, and the second one is teaching and mentoring. We've already spoken a little bit about systems thinking, but if we talk about teaching and mentoring, we will realize that this is in consonance with what we find in the workplace. People move up the ladder from being individual contributors to being team managers, and very little attention and focus is really being paid across the industry to equip people to become better team managers, to become better mentors, to help others benefit from their experiences. And this is really what is the core of teaching and mentoring. And somehow the employers believe that it is not their problem, and this is something that the system should automatically take care of. And sadly enough, there aren't enough credible resources, even on platforms such as Coursera, which help you learn and acquire these skills in a very structured sort of manner. Because the mentoring industry or fraternity or ecosystem is really very unstructured, very fragmented. And if you're lucky, you are able to get hold of a good enough mentor who can mentor you into becoming a good mentor yourself. And the virtuous cycle hopefully carries on. But if it becomes a vicious cycle where you are not the beneficiary of good mentoring, then the same behavior sort of replicates and continues. And this ethos is also reflected in one of the other skills, which is at the bottom and towards the middle, which is about talent management and motivation. So, once again, it appears that the employer's mindset is not to ensure that you are self motivated, is not to ensure that you are able to manage your talent better and lead them to the path of self motivation and to the peak performance of their potential. Again, this is not something that you can do on your own or you are doing on your own on platforms such as Coursera. So, this is another huge area because it impacts not just your ability to perform to the peak of your potential, but also to inspire others in the team and to manage other resources in the team to lead each one of them to the peak of their potential and to bring diverse capabilities that they may all bring to the table into a whole as you bring the team together. So, those were the four big takeaways from this chart. The first one about systems thinking, the second one about teaching and mentoring, the third about motivation and self awareness, and the fourth one about talent management. But if you are paying careful enough attention to this chart, you will realize one thing that is missing and that is amiss. If you just look at the number of skills that are represented on this chart, you will find that a few of them are missing. They are not even on this chart. And what is the reason? I don't know. But my interpretation is that there is not enough learning resources or learning hours being consumed in terms of developing these skills. So, what are some of the most prominent skills which are conspicuous by their absence on this chart? I've already given you a hint for the first one when I directed your attention to detail. And attention to detail is really what is missing. Even though dependability and attention to detail is the seventh most important core skill, it has fallen down to number 18 in the list of skills organized by Skilling Focus of the employers. And as we can see here, or rather not see here, it is not even in the list of the most important skills that are the focus of employees or individuals in terms of their self-learning initiatives, at least not on Coursera. Yet another example of a list which is in the top 10 most important core skills today and which does not find a place in this chart is quality control. So even though it's important enough, employers are not focusing enough on quality in terms of their reskilling focus, and employees or individuals are also not as focused on quality control. So, from your perspective, if you already have the required knowledge and skills as far as quality control is concerned, then there is no reason to worry. But if you do not have these skills, then do bear in mind that this is something which is important. It's valued as amongst the top 10 core skills of the present times. But the employers are not going to be focused on it in terms of your reskilling initiatives. And if you're falling behind in this domain, then it is certainly something that you should look at developing the right sort of skills so that you are equipping yourself much better for the future. So, by now, you've got a good sense of what are some of the most important skills from the perspectives of the current importance, in terms of the future importance or evolution, in terms of the reskilling focus by the employer, and also in terms of what people generally are studying or learning on their own. And of course, you can replace or substitute the learning chart of Coursera with your own learning agenda and your own learning plan. And you can create a customized plan for yourself in terms of what skills you believe are going to be important for you going forward. And in order to make that task a little bit easier is this chart where we have two data points that we've already seen. On the x-axis, we have the reskilling focus by the employers, and the ones on the right hand side of the x-axis are the ones where the reskilling focus is the highest, which is exactly the same as the previous chart. But on the y-axis this time, we have what the employers believe are the core skills or the top skills that are core to the current workforce. So once again, instead of trying to read all the 26 data points on this chart, the way I would interpret this is by drawing a line right through the middle. So all the items that are close enough to this line would typically represent skills where there is balance between how important the skill is today as well as the emphasis that the employers are putting on that skill in terms of their reskilling or training focus and initiatives. But how do we interpret items that are far away from this line? If you look at the items which are diverging from the central line on the right hand side, these are the areas where the employers have a much higher proportionate or relative focus in terms of reskilling. And these are about AI and big data, leadership and influence, design and user experience, and environment stewardship. The same things that we've kind of uncovered in the previous charts, but this chart just makes it visually easier to understand. More importantly, which are the areas where the employers have a relatively lower focus in terms of their reskilling initiatives? And these are most of the self efficacy skills, which are motivation, dependability, and attention to detail, systems thinking, which is a cognitive skill, as well as quality control and reading, writing, and maths. And many of these skills, you will realize from the previous chart, are skills that even we do not focus on individually. So, those are really the most important skills that you need to focus on in terms of your own custom self learning and self development agenda. Not to mention that even at workplace, of course, you can influence the kind of training initiatives and the kind of training agenda that is being drawn out for you so that you are able to make the best use of the funds that are available for the learning and development budgets. So instead of just going with the flow and being a passenger in this journey, you can take your future in your hands by focusing on the present and presenting yourself with the right sort of skills that are most crucial for you. Of course, these were all generalized observations, and the results will vary significantly depending on the industry that you may be in or the job that you may be performing. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a great idea to be caught up by these job titles literally, but it is important to look at the constituent skill sets that are core to performing each one of those jobs. Job titles may come and they may go, and we may have in future job titles that we may have never heard of or never even imagined. But the world of skills is not all that dynamic. At the end of the day, the core skills that are required are very similar. It's just that these skills are being applied in very different contexts, which gives rise to a different job title. So if you think of it this way and keep aligning and developing and acquiring the right sort of skills, you will build the perfect arsenal so that your future is secure enough. Of course, this would depend on the kind of jobs that you intend to perform or that you are currently performing. And in that context, since we've already covered the future of jobs in the previous episode and the present and the future of skills in this episode, wouldn't it be wonderful if we were to overlay these two on top of each other and figure out what are the skills required for which kind of jobs and how do these two interplay with each other? So, if you are interested in seeing what would be the results for such a juxtaposition, then the good news is that this is exactly what is coming up in a future episode. So stay tuned, subscribe to this channel if you want to ensure that you keep receiving such inputs and insights which I am happy to provide to you on a regular basis. But there is somebody else that you need to keep happy apart from me, which is the algorithm. And in order to keep the algorithm happy, you definitely need to like this video and also drop your comments. And if you want to truly secure your future, you really need to hit the bell icon so that you are notified of every time when an insightful episode is uploaded on this channel. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed the present and I will see you in the future in a next episode.